and experiences. And so I'm really thrilled to have my former Unity colleague and friend, Tony Parisi, join us as a speaker and moderator for our first event in this series. So now I want to talk a little bit more about the event itself. So a few months back, Everett from the VR/AR Association, or otherwise we call it VARA, reached out to me to see if we wanted to collaborate on this event. And I thought it was a fantastic event, all about helping people. And after talking for some time, we decided this should be a series of events so that we can factor in other industries that may be facing challenges, or perhaps during COVID time, or maybe found ways to adapt. So we want to hear their stories to help other people in the industry, in the XR community. So our goal is to have these speakers help or provide you with ideas to adapt and overcome the challenges you face today. Here is the schedule of the additional events in the series. Once we confirm the dates, we'll certainly send you an invitation. So those dates are up. Everett's already mentioned them, but if you want to take a screenshot, and as soon as we have confirmed dates, we will definitely send you the invitation. So please enjoy this event and please stay safe. Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks, Joe. So let's kick things off. So we're going to start with a talk from Tony Parisi. So Tony is a virtual reality pioneer. I'm sure many of you know him or have heard of him. Serial entrepreneur and angel investor. He's the co-creator of 3D graphic standards, including VRML, X3D, and GLTF. I hope I got all those right. He's authored multiple books and is a leading spokesperson on the immersive industry. Currently, he is the head of the AR/VR ad innovation at Unity Technologies. Tony, I'll take it over to you. Great to have you, and thanks.
Thank you, Everett. Can everyone hear me? Just give me a quick yes on that. Yep. I am so delighted to be here speaking with Brara and whoever's out there. I can't wait to get into the panel a little bit later. Everett, it's been good to meet you. Joe, it's so fantastic to reconnect. As she mentioned, she and I were colleagues for a couple of years at Unity, so that makes this really extra special. So thank you both so much for having me. I just want to set this up a little bit with a few opening remarks about Unity. I'm sure most of you know about us. If you don't, we're the leading real-time 3D creation platform, powering more than half of all mobile games, lots of stuff on consoles, PCs, clearly a pretty big reach in VR, AR, and mixed reality as well. We like to say these days that we believe the world is a better place with more creators in it. And I love that mission, and we're dedicated to it. And that's the thing that's sort of pasted on everyone's wall every day and keeps us going. This is by way of providing creation tools. The Unity editor, many of you may know about, the game engine that powers all the real-time 3D graphics, that reaches 30 different hardware platforms, but as well a set of services for operating business. So if you are in the game business or you're in a different industry where you need live ops, we can help with a lot of that, whether it's multiplayer gaming services, real-time text and chat, or advertising to help you monetize on your mobile game. And so I am actually working in the advertising space and working on a lot of immersive stuff that may or may not come up in today's conversation, but that's my day gig. But that's within a larger purview of spending the last 4 years at Unity and watching the company transform. I was originally hired because about 5 years ago, Unity started thinking maybe this immersive technology, VR, AR, MR, would be useful in more industries than just the game industry that Unity was dominant in at the time. We'd been getting signals that there were industrial uses for this. Car companies were starting to experiment with the technology to change the way they might design a car. They might use a HoloLens, for example, to change the way they would do the design process to configure the car. And many other industries started playing around with our technology. We didn't really have the solutions to super serve them the way we did with game developers back then. But we did start forming this thesis that immersive tech was going to be the underpinning of future user interface. We had the engine and creation tools and some of these operate services back then, which have just grown in the last 4 or 5 years tremendously, to power these other industries. And that thesis is pretty much borne out. We now have full-fledged operating businesses in automotive, architecture and construction, and the film industry. And we're looking at many, many other industries we can power with additional sets of tools and services. So that's great. And, I think we're just getting started. That 5-year period is just really we're at that first inflection point where we're now going to see a lot of use happening across all of these different devices that Unity powers. But going back to the mission of helping creatives succeed with XR, across the board, whether it's headsets or handsets, whether it's mixed reality or VR, it's clearly been a long haul these last 5 years. The hardware platforms, especially the head-worn ones like VR and MR headsets, have been bulky, been pricey. A lot of times they've been tethered to an expensive PC. All of that's changing. It's all changing for the better. But for the better part of these last 5 years, that has meant a lot of friction. And so friction is not great for content creators who want to reach an audience. So that's why Unity has been so tremendously excited about LBE, location-based entertainment, as a venue for creators to be able to reach audiences. But LBE is more than just about reducing friction. It's also about creating amazing capabilities because you can bring the whole body into it. You can have live gameplay. It's kind of combining immersive theater, arcade gaming, live, competitions into this wonderful thing. And we've been extremely supportive and excited about it for these years in the past, especially because the distribution issues have been there. And this seemed like a great sort of stepping stone to educate the public and have, give creators a way to reach audiences. And then along comes COVID. The pandemic is touching most aspects of our lives. I think we all know that, how we shop, how we order food, how we learn and work together. And so this has been an extremely challenging time. And so, think about what that means for LBE, and that's what we're going to really dive into in this hour or so today. From my personal standpoint, one of the first things I thought of is this is going to destroy the LBE market, such as it was, which I would find unfortunate given XR's journey that we would hit such a horrible bump in the road right now, because from a personal standpoint, I'm thinking I'm not going to put one of these things on my face. First of all, I'm not going to go to a mall. Why am I going to go to a mall? Why am I leaving my house at all? I'm just going to pop open Amazon and hit buttons. But even beyond that, I'm going to put a headset on my face that someone else has worn. I don't think so. So that's where the logic has gone. Now, it's great that we have two speakers today who are going to tell us how they've been able to adapt to this world, and I can't wait to get into this. Zero Latency has figured out how to make this work, and in a time when you're going to have a bunch of people like me who would not be thinking about doing that. So I can't wait to hear what Tim has to say about that. And then Amy providing products that can help make this safe in a time when hygiene is of utmost concern, when there's this looming, existential threat to us through the pandemic. This is just incredible. So, while many other parts of the XR ecosystem are healthy, these things, mobile devices, now I can use AR to shop. I can use AR to tell stories, and those can be in the home or on the street if I am walking around. In the home with VR and the new, generations of headsets, remote work through mixed reality. All of these things are trending up. Let's see what LBE can do to come along for this right now. And so it's just delightful that there are folks who have not thrown in the towel and that can adapt. So with that, I would love to hand it back to you, Everett. I can't wait to hear what you have to say to both Tim and Amy, what they have to say. And then after you guys chat, I'm going to come back and we're going to do a panel. Take it away.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. All right, so next, we thought it would be useful to kind of frame the broader discussion of what the projections looking forward are going to look like by looking at two companies that are really prominent and have had really interesting stories in 2020, and just have kind of a storytelling of what their experience has been like in 2020 leading a company. So we're going to start with Tim over at Zero Latency. So Tim, you can take your webcam live. So Tim is CEO of Zero Latency, highly successful free roam location-based entertainment VR company. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. He is waking up very early and based in Australia.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, start with just kind of taking us back a little bit. Take us back to the end of year meetings last year. What did your roadmap look like? Where were you headed? And then the pandemic hits. Walk us through that first month. What was that experience like, and what were the challenges? What worked? What didn't?
Yeah, so look, we came into 2020 with some pretty big growth aspirations, excuse me, as well as making sure, like we had some partnerships with companies that are really struggling with the pandemic, such as big retail and big cinema chain outlets. Those projects had been put on hold while those companies sort of grapple with how they renovate their business models for this point. It's tough. It's actually, I would say, getting better. Like I feel we've kind of bottom turned out of this wave. There's still work to be done. In March, it was very challenging. I think it happened so rapidly. In February, for example, I was at a conference in LA, and the keynote speaker made a joke about you don't need to shake hands if you're still worried about the virus. Ha ha ha. Not so funny now. So there was still a lot of misunderstanding. I think just a general sense of this is a problem that doesn't affect Australia, doesn't affect America, and then within sort of a matter of 6 weeks, everything was getting shut down. April was probably our worst month across as everything sort of shut down, but things have reopened now around the world. I think the challenges that we're facing are the challenges that anyone's facing when you need to leave your home to do something, but Zero Latency is uniquely placed to not benefit from it, because I would say there's not a benefit from this, but to come out the other side of in a COVID world. People keep saying it's a post-COVID world. It's just a COVID world. I think so. There's things I would talk about them now, or about what we do versus other entertainment offerings, and moving through this patch about why I think that VR is going to be something that is probably more resilient than other industries. I think some of the business models like cinemas are going to really be challenged. There's more evidence that COVID-19 is airborne. Are you going to want to spend 2 hours in a locked box for 200 other people? I think there's still going to be hurdles to overcome. And at the moment, I think depending on where you sit, some people are not worried about it. Some people are very afraid of the virus. And I think over time, people are still going to do social things. They're going to want to leave their homes. They're going to want to see people. And we're already seeing that happening in places where the virus has been either suppressed heavily or almost completely exterminated. So West Australia, Queensland, these places in Australia. So we have a site in Queensland. The ticket sales are actually stronger than they were in July last year, as an example. As people come out, they've got more money in their pocket. There's also less optionality. Larger places are struggling to open, or they've got caps. What a free roam facility does, like ours, is you're putting small groups through. Some of our sites have got back on their feet by just saying, look, we will only use, rather than letting a group of two, and a group of two all come together, the first person that books, will just book the session out. So there's different ways that we can approach it. And I think the other thing, which is going to be an educational piece, as people realize that the virus is not going away anytime soon, people are still going to want to leave their homes to socialize. If you're coming to a VR facility with a really strong hygiene regiment like we have, it's probably safer than going to the supermarket, as an example. Like we're using hospital grade disinfectant, all our equipment anyway in between sessions. So I think there is a perception that it's dangerous, but ultimately it's a lot safer than a lot of things that people are doing. I don't know what the hygiene regimen is in the back of an Uber Eats bike, but I would debate that it's probably less than what's happening at Zero Latency. So I think there will be, as things start to normalize, and traditionally, I think humans do normalize to things even that are horrible. You look at the experience of the British during the Blitz, bombs were dropping every night and they just go about their business. There's a certain point where people just get on with their lives. And I think there will be less entertainment offerings for a period of time. And I think small group activities that are curated, that are hygienic, that you're not spending 2 hours in a room with hundreds of other people, will ultimately be where people turn once they get sick of being in their homes.
Yeah. Have you had to make any significant changes in the near term? I mean, eventually everything will go back to normal, we all assume, but have you had to change the product, change the business to adapt?
Yeah, so we've made a few changes. So we very early in the piece rolled out, I think it's the same word all over the world, social distance compliant content. So one of the good things about free roam VR is that you are moving around. It's a space that's sort of 2,000 square feet. You've got 6 to 8 people in it. We reduce capacity to 6 players in a lot of areas just to keep that density as low as possible. You're actually being kept apart up to sort of 6 feet in some regions. There's actually ways that we can be putting in best practice, putting in masks, hygiene, temperature checking when people arrive, all those things that help. Most importantly, show that we're taking it seriously, as we always do with hygiene, making people feel safe, but also limiting the spread where we can. So changing those games, and then changing some things. We have quite a flexible online platform. Changing changing some of the way that people book. So talked about it before, not allowing multiple households to come. So in some places in Europe, a household can come and socialize. So it's like, okay, we'll just take a booking from one group. So there's ways that we've done that just to keep people coming back.
Yeah, that's great. So speak a little bit to the challenges. When we talked earlier, you said something which I've heard from a lot of different founders, which is that it is just exceptionally difficult to plan in a time that is by definition really uncertain. And no one really knows what it's going to look like in 1 month, 3 months, 2 years.
Yes.
We're starting to get a bit of a barometer, but back in March and April, it was anybody's guess. So, you've got an international company, you've got something like 22 branches, I think. How did you steer the company given all of that uncertainty? How do you choose where to invest and what to do?
Yeah, so we have a model where we have 45 locations, and they're across 22 different countries, and they are a lot of those or the vast majority are independent operators. So we've been trying to support them as much as we can. So if there's local requirements like the social distancing, making those changes. If there's ways that bookings need to be changed, making those changes to the system. So trying to give them the operational tools that they need to operate. And then also we have a fee structure, giving like shutting down fees for a period of time, and lowering fees, just to make sure that everyone has the best opportunity to come out the other side of this, because we are confident that that is going to happen, and we're already seeing that return all over the world, not just in places where the virus has been suppressed. We're seeing it all over the world as things open. People are coming back. But from a head office point of view, I guess this classic, really, like, we very early in the piece did some projections and we're like, right, we just need to cut all unnecessary costs. We need to just like contract the hours that people are working, sadly, as much as we can, and just focus on like what is core business. And I think silver lining, maybe it's not silver, maybe it's cadmium, but certainly aligning to the cloud is that you do some introspection about like, wow, what is the most important things that we should be doing? What are superfluous activities we don't need to do? How do we optimize our business? I've been really impressed with everyone at Zero Latency has really focused on that. Ourselves, our own sites that we operate, our licensed partner sites have all just got in the optimization mentality, because you have to. And I think also realizing that, that to your point about planning, I do like to plan. I'm relatively risk adverse as a person. You realize that there's always going to be curveballs thrown. So we have just focused really, really very intensely on the things that we can control. Like moving forwards with continue to move forwards with the Far Cry IP, which is really exciting. That's going to be launched next year, which is a fantastic way in sort of Q1, Q2 next year to be relaunching sites, relaunching the brand with a fantastic piece of content, because we have a lot of, when you see people come and play a VR experience, generally they haven't played it, it's amazing. You come and see people play a free roam experience when they haven't done it before, and people are genuinely blown away. It's impossible to describe that sensation of being inside an immersive experience. So to be able to put out AAA content on that platform is really, really exciting, and is just going to elevate that up. Especially the way that we're approaching things. Part of what Zero Latency has always done is, rather than try to make a theme park ride that feels like you're on rails, we're trying to give people as much agency as possible. Like, our theory is we want people to come and feel like they've had an adventure, feel like they've had some agency and experience something cool with their friends. And that's very much what we're going to keep focusing on. That's
great. All right. Well, I'll let you go until the panel. I don't want to take up too much time, so let's move over to Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tim. So, Amy, you can go ahead and go live. There we go. So Amy is CEO of Cleanbox Technology, a company with hardware decontamination products designed for XR devices, and now for many more industries as well. Amy, great to see you.
Likewise, nice to see you, Everett.
So, same kind of thing as we just talked about with Tim. I imagine for your company, you've had a really incredible story of 2020 where you had all these new demand sources and all these things coming at you. So just kind of take us back to what your company looked like, in January, where you were headed, and then as you saw this event happening, what that first month or two looked like.
Well, we were growing in January significantly, and our core focus originally was the XR industry, and we always plan to continue to develop our product lines. We have 3 currently right now, and I think really what this did was, fortunately for us, we were already working on scalability for a number of things and had a lot of things that had been in development for a while, and what it really forced us to do is really pick up the pace. As a small team, I guess the good thing about a startup and entrepreneurs is that you know how to pivot and you know how to be agile as a company. We're already a remote company. We really have people all over the world right now that are working for us, and they've always worked from home, so we didn't have that disruption in the sense of our business. But I could say around March, a few things changed. One, there was the PPE shortage, and our products started to be donated to local hospitals for decontamination of N95 masks. And so what we did was we had a client reach out to us and say, hey, we have all these units that are sitting in offices where people are not at right now. What can we do to help? And so in 10 days, we developed a retrofit for our CX1, which is the item that's been on the market the longest. Specific, so you could hang an N95 mask and fully decontaminate both sides of it. So that client donated a number of their own units. We provided the retrofits at cost. And then at the same time, we created a product called Clean Defense that was specific for N95s or other kinds of masks. The other thing that we did was push really, really hard to get into a biohazard level 3 lab so we could actually test against SARS-CoV-2 and not just one of the FDA recommended substitutes. So we were able to do that, and I think that's been important because while there are, of course, other contagions around the world, and I'm certain that there will be again, hopefully not anytime in the near future, but having that, because it shut the whole world down, to be able to validate our engineering on both our core products as well as masks, that's been really important for us. So we've just been pushing new products that we had in the pipeline already, but we've moved up the release date just because, we're working hard as well because we have, we're here as a service in a lot of ways to our clients. We wouldn't necessarily exist if the XR industry didn't already exist. I mean, we came as a product solution to problems that we anticipated people would have when they started using XR more, broadly in business. And we really wanted to remove that barrier of entry by providing a solution that would allow them to feel confident, know they were confident in providing hygiene, and pass that on to the consumer.
Yeah, and so when it's incredible that you created the retrofit in 10 days and then released the product and I forget what it was, a couple months. Was that, and it was kind of into a new industry, or at least selling a bit to a new industry. Did you get a lot of support through that because of kind of your helping COVID? Was that a positive process? Was it incredibly difficult to kind of break into that new industry?
Well, anytime you launch a new product, it's a whole process. You've got your whole campaign and how you do that. And on the manufacturing side, generally speaking, it takes some time to launch a new product. We did have some really good, we had a lot of goodwill. I mean, the fact that our original client had said, hey, we're going to donate X number of units. We actually had another client donate some more into hospitals in Canada, and then another one in Germany, and then another in Mexico. So, and then even on the prototyping side, some of our manufacturing companies that are vendors that we worked with said, hey, you guys are doing this to address COVID. Let us help you. We can either, we'll overnight your product so that you can validate it faster. So yeah, we saw a lot of support there, and I think as nobody's really known where this is going to continue to take the world in general and the XR industry specifically, and there's been a lot of fear because a lot of this is new and we're just kind of on the uptick in terms of how XR can change the workplace and healthcare and LBEs, of course, entertainment. And so a lot of it's been an unknown. But we've been working to look ahead and say, okay, here's what people are worried about right now. We can solve X, Y, Z. And here's what we anticipate they'll be worried about in 6 months. So all these products that we had in the pipeline, let's move them up and have them ready this year so that we can provide that. And so we've done that.
That's great. And so what is, you spoke to it a little bit, but speak not to the broader projections, I'll leave that for the panel, but what does your roadmap look like now? What are you focusing on and where do you hope to be in a year?
We have 3 product lines out right now, and we just are releasing our Star series, which is really for non-HMDs. Our CX series is focused on anything you wear on your head or face, but our Star series is focused on literally everything else. Our first product, called the Major, which starts shipping in November, the end of November, is designed for full 360 decontamination for anything you throw in the unit. It's also mobile. It also has data tracking, RFID tagging, so you can track the hygiene history of any kind of object that you put in it. There's a data dashboard component, so a business can track and validate that these objects are being cleaned, and that is a form of risk mitigation, as well as, of course, boosting consumer confidence. So that is an important product that I know already is expanding our horizons and our borders. And then we have other products as well. So, for us, we're made in the US, and that's helped during COVID because we didn't experience a lot of the supply chain disruption that other companies, that were relying on importing some of their pieces of their product did. So we're very fortunate in that sense.
That's great. All right. Well, let's get to the panel. I'm really excited to look at the broader forward-looking questions here. Panel is going to be moderated by Tony and have Amy and Tim. So it looks like you guys are already live, so take it away.
Hey guys, wow, this is really something. I opened at the top, and I meant it sincerely. I thought LBE was donezo, dead, goner. And here we have 2 amazing company leaders of nimble companies who've been able to deal with this situation. In some cases, even make some lemonade out of it. And that's pretty incredible. So this is going to be fun. We're going to ramble for a while. We'll start a little bit structured, but please feel free to take this conversation wherever you guys want. I got a handful of questions ready to go, but I've already made up a few more listening to you guys interview with Everett. So let's start here, actually. Tim, you touched on some headwinds you're actually getting right now. For example, there's more disposable income in people's pockets because they've been hanging out, spending less on lots of stuff, and that's been giving you some lift. Are there any other things that either of you think might be providing some headwinds here? That's for both of you, but Tim, please start.
Look, I think there's things that we see happening and will hopefully continue. Well, hopefully it's a strong word, but because it's bad for other people. But ultimately, one of the big challenges in location-based entertainment is retail rents and commercial rents. They're very high. That was already changing coming into this year. Europe. Yeah,
the retail apocalypse was sort of starting on its own pre-COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I think the punitive relationships between landholders and people renting them was starting to change, getting things like, all right, we're doing revenue share, like let's take some of the risk together, because the expectation before was you sign a 10-year lease, you pay us $300,000 a year and you take all the risk. That was already changing very much in Europe. Larger change, I won't give their names, but larger landholders were already changing that, and in America it was happening as well. I think we'll see the acceleration of that. And if your rents are lower, your ROI is stronger, your break even's lower, and that helps people come back into those venues, which is really important in terms of operators. And then I think it's sort of one person's misfortune is another person's benefit. There will be less entertainment options, I think, coming out of this. Like Dave & Buster's is down 85% of revenue. These things that involve large, high staffing, high perishable good costs, they're hard businesses to run in this. You want to reopen a restaurant, you got to spend like tens of thousands of dollars, on food, etc. Whereas a zero latency, you want to reopen it, even one ops manager can run it by themselves if they want to. They'll be busy, but you can get an ops manager, a casual person, and reopen your website and turn your social media marketing back on. That's a much easier way to open a business. And plus, we're talking the small group stuff. I think is going to be important. People are still going to want to spend time with their friends. I don't know. Being a Melburnian in Australia, we've been locked down for a very long time. In house arrest. And people are chomping at the bit to go and see their friends, but they are also anxious about going to larger venues. They're not going to want to go and see a football game of 75,000 other people. So I see there is some silver linings there potentially, but it's also very early. I feel like we're kind of halfway through this event as people are realizing. I listened to a very good talk the other day of someone saying it's no longer a crisis. This is just something that needs to be managed as a community, and you're already seeing that narrative change with government leaders. Like, we can't just keep the economy closed forever. How do we live with the virus? And I think that narrative will keep changing through society. And hopefully,
let's come back to that. That's a great point. I am going to touch on that a little bit later, is the sort of life cycle of where this is all headed. Amy, do you have anything to add on this one in terms of headwinds or other positive factors?
Sure. I mean, I think it just depends too on the geography, like you're mentioning. We have clients all around the world, and some of them have been okay. They've either been able to stay open or be closed a short amount of time. Others have closed then reopened. So I think a lot of it depends on, so many factors, not just, people being afraid to go out or being limited, by regulations, whether or not that they can go out. One thing that we've tried to do, though, and again, providing venues, specifically since we're talking about LBEs, providing them a way to say, okay, not only are we actually decontaminating our products, but we'll talk about it. We can show you where we provide marketing materials for our clients. I've seen we've been tagged on a lot of different things on social media, saying, hey guys, we're doing something positive. This has been tested against COVID. And so anything we can do to help provide and keep those businesses open is only beneficial across the board.
So this is a place potentially where you're saying even LBE could lead. It can lead, relative to other entertainment endeavors, potentially show the way of, a place where the needs were so dire we had to do something. We had to do something radical. This is how we're doing it, and this could be an exemplar for other aspects of the industry, right?
Absolutely, I think so. To your point again about social distancing and crowds of 75,000 or 200 in a closed space. If you are a 4-person or however many person VR venue, and you can social distance, and then you can you can manage your throughput, I think you're well positioned in that sense. The other perspective, I would say, chomping at the bit is definitely the case around the world, I think, especially with people who have children at home. I'm not one of them, but I was at home with my sister and her children for a significant amount of time. Kids want to get out. They want to see other kids. They want to do something. And if they can say, hey, mom, hey, dad, hey, whomever, this is safe. There's no reason why you can't do it. It's open now. Let's go. That's what they're going to want to do. They're not going to want to stay home. I think they may be tired of even watching TV or playing on their iPads for a while.
Great points. Great points. I'm going to start this one off. This is primarily for Tim, but Amy, if you had any color to add to that, this would be great. And this just came up as you were chatting with Everett earlier. Okay, so imagine inherently you've had less foot traffic because of what's been going on. I mean, even prior to, probably was decimated initially, but now as you're climbing out of it, are these additional procedures, the hygiene, distancing, the testing on the way in, are these all going to severely limit your ability to scale to where you wanted to be? I'm just imagining like all your internal modeling has taken a giant hit over this in terms of footfalls, all the profit margins. Yeah, you mentioned you've got some positive factors in negotiating rents that helps with your operating costs, but on the revenue side of this, is this going to severely limit you, or you think you're going to get back to a place more or less where you thought you'd be in a year or two?
Look, I think probably it will take another year. Like, I think from a zero latency, I think it's important to separate out individual operating experiences for the head office, but ultimately we're intrinsically linked. I like to say we're chained together or tied together going up this mountain, and we all need to get there together. So it's definitely lowering the density from 8 to 6 is can be challenging, especially on those peaker times where it's Saturday, Sunday. But I think keeping it, the important thing that I see is getting open and getting people in the habit of going out of their homes. And it's not just us; it's all different location based or entertainment opportunities. And I think that those things are important steps along the way. It doesn't make venues non-viable. And footfall is less important. It depends on the venue. Some of our venues are in malls, some of them are standalones outside of a mall environment. It definitely makes it more challenging. And I think our projections were, we were like last year, we almost doubled our footprint of sites all over the world. We were really bullish about doing it again this year. That's not going to happen, but we are going to come out with more sites than we went into 2020. Wow. And the good news is it looks like, the majority, if not all, are going to come out the other side with us, which is really important. We've got operators that are looking at and using some of these tools to negotiate rents with people, the more aggressive operators, and deploying capital. Because you also, money's never been cheaper. Like in Europe, some of the business loan, they're almost free money. So, and you've got incentives from landlords. So it's not a bad time if you have the cojones to go in there and to set one of these up, and then the break even is an easier place to get to. But it definitely is going to be challenging. I think it really depends on how people do people stay in their homes forever? Do they just buy another iPad and a Netflix subscription and never leave their home? We're a social.
Well, I certainly know people who are doing that, but I just don't feel like it's everyone. I don't think most people can live like that forever, right?
And look, I see that with the people that work for me. Some people are really enjoying not having to go out. They live their lives online. That's how they like to roll. There's other people who are really chomping at the bit to get out and spend time with their friends. It really depends on who you are. And I think ultimately what zero latency and what location-based entertainment provides is something novel to do with your friends and have a shared experience. And I don't think that's going to go away for us. I think as a people, really. But the future is, it's hard to know how it's going to roll.
You touch on one thing I find interesting, and I don't know how much you're modeling this, and you must just model basically peak foot traffic, all these factors, cost of the real estate, per person and over time, et cetera. Is it possible, given the changing behavior patterns of work from home and other things, where you can get more evenly distributed daytime footfalls? And it's not all about those peaks, which I'm sure you had a lot of dead spots during the day, and then there would be huge peaks. Does that possibly change now?
Look, potentially. I think it's one of those maybe not. It's hard to tell. I mean, it will be. It's interesting as well that people who have. It's going to be not many of our centres are in the CBDs of cities. Just the real estate doesn't make sense, so they're actually further out, which is potentially more helpful because people are not all pouring.
You're planning a trip, so you're going to just plan a trip. You'll go. You make an appointment. You plan it for that. Wow, so possible, right? That is potentially something there. Let's hold on to that one as a definitely positive thought. Amy, I don't know if you had anything to add to that specific thing, because I got a pretty big question for you regardless, but
okay,
you want to start picking up on that. Otherwise, I'll launch into it.
Go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Okay. So how do industries need to adapt around these cultural norms of safety, for LBE and XR? And do you think it's going to be driven by, safety and sanitization needs, or is it going to be like litigation and liability that's going to be a driver of this stuff? I mean, this must be where, a zone where you live in all the time. It's like the vitamin or the pill kind of concept, right?
Yeah. I to be honest, both. I think that I think businesses are going to want to open, and they're going to have to convince their customers or potential customers that they've done everything in their power. They're absolutely safe. You're not going to catch something from us that could, kill another member of your family, for example. And at the same time, show people, hey, this is what we're doing. Yes, I think also as maybe more restrictions are lifted, hopefully, depending on how many waves we might end up going through, nobody knows right now. But let's, when we get to the point where opening up globally is a little less restrictive, then I think there will be a definite focus on litigation, because people are going to be more comfortable, hopefully still wash their hands, but you can never guarantee that, I suppose. And then start to really just go back to depending on the operator to have done their job. So then that's my perspective on how that will roll out. What we try to do is say, hey guys, you can actually do two things at once here, and let us help you. So that's how we're hoping to grow with both of those on the business side of things.
Got it. Yeah, that's something I want to follow up. I'm just kind of now musing about this. It feels like the cultural shift in folks' accommodation to mask wearing, distancing, get the hand sanitizer on the way in and the way out of the grocery store. That all's working for you right now. That works for Cleanbox in the sense that this will do just another thing, right? Oh, this is I'm going to sanitize everything. You know, everything's potentially pretty lethal for me right now. And so, you know, from your view, how far does this extend? I mean, we're talking about XR today, but where do you think, in a sort of moonshot sense for you, this could go?
Well, I think that the changes that people are experiencing on a personal level, a cultural level, a business level, to be honest, I think that they're going to last a long time for a lot of reasons. On a small level, you've got children who are changing their habits because they're not going to school, and they have to be told why they're not going to school, why they can't hang out with their friends. If you're playing sports, for example, in the park, and it's a touch sport, you can't really play it the same way. And then flipping over on the other side, you know, I'm generally traveling all the time. I'm always on a plane. And that means that traditionally, you know, I get sick every 4 weeks or so. It's just inevitable. And I can tell you that I've gone for so long without being sick. I had forgotten how frequently I got sick because I was exposed to other germs all the time. I, for one, would love it if airplanes keep their level of hygiene. I don't want that to ever go back. I'm in New York City right now. I'm on the subway. They're starting to
Oh my God, the New York subway. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's very, very clean and pretty empty for the most part. Going into restaurants, I mean, honestly, these are COVID-19 is very contagious. Yes, there are other contagions that we could see in the future that could be even, you know, more devastating should precautions not be taken. And considering that, you know, we're pretty global. I mean, even though not as many flights happening right now, but people don't want to go back once progress like that's been made. People are going to want to keep doing that. They're going to want to start their travels again. I certainly do. Maybe not work all the time. Maybe I'd like to go on vacation. But, you know, at some point, that you start to think about the possibilities that you had before. You're going to want to go back and do that again.
Wow. So it's for either of you. Are you concerned about a second wave? You started touching on this stuff already, Tim. You know, so-called W-shaped recovery, or possibly a sawtooth wave where it keeps doing this for a long time, and there will be outbreaks, maybe in more limited fashions. I mean, are you expecting that? Are you concerned by it? What sort of steps might you be taking in your planning for either your companies or just your general point of view on this? Me personally, I think we're definitely going to see some more, at least mini outbreaks, even with all the measures, and we're seeing some as we speak in Europe. So what's everyone's thinking on that?
Yes, I think yes. Really, yes. I mean, I had 2 live events planned in Europe for, well, right about now. And then, you know, I had planned to travel, but then of course there were spikes again in those particular places. And then coming from the US, I have a lot more limitations now. I mean, I think the only realistic perspective is to plan for that and hope that it's not bad. But I think you have to plan for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we've already seen a small like you look, and countries react in different ways. You look at what Australia's done. We had an incredibly hard lockdown in Melbourne. Crazy in a lot of ways from a global standard. From the reflections that people come back and go, "Wow, you're living like that." But that's one way that the country's reacted to it. You look at New Zealand that had a similar lockdown. They suppressed it, but they took a 12% hit in GDP, like not annualized, like in a month, which means that their economy will be 50% the size if they did that again. And you've got, you know, sensible, not to cast aspersions at other countries, but traditionally sensible and pretty conservative countries like Germany, France, going, hey, we can't keep shutting everything down. So I think there will be a way to live with this, like going on planes. And I agree, like keeping those hygiene measures up, like people that grew up in the polio times, my father-in-law is one, like he's still terrified of germs because when he was a boy, people got sick and they didn't walk again. So it changed the way he looks at things. It's going to change the way that we do things. I think there's definitely going to be consistent waves of COVID-19. I'm not an epidemiologist, but it certainly seems logical. But I think that governments are already working really, really hard to work out how you do that. Is it like mask wearing is really effective? That's worked really well in Melbourne. Like, and it happened overnight. All of a sudden, it wasn't weird to wear I wore an entire face covering into a mask, which I must say was actually quite amusing. And everyone's like, "Oh yeah, you're wearing a mask in the bank. No worries, mate. Through you come." So I think things will change. And is it localized lockdowns? I think these big, heavy sledgehammer.
Yeah, wearing a mask into a bank, right?
Yeah, I know, and we've all adapted to it, and it's cool. You put your mask on. You got to take it off to be identified, and then you put it back on. It's So I think there will be second waves, but we'll keep adapting to it. I think ultimately you can't. And look, I mean, yes, I have a vested interest in this, but ultimately I don't want to catch COVID-19. I don't like being locked down, but I know it's necessary at this stage. But ultimately, there will be more localized approaches to this, other ways to handle it, because the big sledgehammer, we shut the entire country down every time there's an outbreak. It's not sustainable. The entire global economy will ultimately collapse. I think it's just not, unless GDP doesn't matter and they just keep printing money and hyperinflation is not a thing and we move into a glorious world. But I think the economic principles will remain. We need to find a way to manage this outbreak to outbreak without killing all the economies in the world.
Well, to that point, though, you have to look about what is sustainable, and you asked, are we going to go back, or you insinuated, or would we go back? And I think given that particular point in terms of economics, we can't, right? We have to, businesses have to maintain and or have a plan, create a plan, stick to a plan about how they're going to mitigate all of these types of risks in everything that they do. I think that's just going to be the new normal. And I think new normal, not everybody just being sick and at home.
And I think one thing that like, you look at the speed limit, we'd be a lot safer if we never got in a car. We'd be a lot safer if we all went at 20 kilometers an hour, but that's not how it is, because we need to get to places in a hurry. It's the same. Every country has its own thing that they grapple with that is dangerous, but everyone wants to do it, whether it's fireworks, firearms, fast cars. This is just another one of those things. It's very fresh. We've been lived in a privileged time in our society where we had antibiotics, like preventable illnesses. We are in a really, like, I'm 43. I've always grown up in an age where a lot of things are preventable, and that's really been peaking. And I think society is going to shift its mindset a little bit, and there's risk and reward. I think we're getting ready for that conversation now, because the impacts are massive. Like, people's lives are disrupted, their livelihoods are disrupted, and as that happens en masse, people are going to realize, hang on a moment, like, let's have a sensible conversation about risk management. That's more of a macro societal thing versus just LBE entertainment. But I feel those conversations are happening. They're already happening in some of the more business-orientated press. They obviously have a vested interest, but they're also happening in the parliamentary halls in places like Germany and in Australia. So, yeah.
It's fascinating. Thank you for that, both. Let's shift gears a little bit, back to tech. So, Everett kicked us off with that Bill Gates quote, which I hadn't heard directly as the Bill Gates quote about, the speed of innovation, et cetera, and how quickly we need to adapt. I did hear the Scott Galloway version. He's the, Kara Swisher's partner on the Pivot podcast, where he said something to the effect of, whatever your 5 to 10 year plans you're making, do them now. What is happening now, that longer term innovation curve is basically collapsed. It's compressed. And you have to do it now. In my work, I'm seeing that a lot. I spend a lot of time on, it's AR and advertising. It's kind of the upper funnel to discover products on your phone, which ultimately leads to people transacting and shopping in the safety of the home and all that. So we're seeing those changes happen kind of lickety split. And again, also with the changes in malls and footfalls and retail and physical retail, those things all sort of came together really quickly as an echo and a reflection of what we were talking about in LBE. So, I think that stuff's happening. We're definitely accelerating. The question is, how much of this is going to stick? How much of this is going to stick? How much of what we all talk about here, because we're so in the reads and close to it and so important to our day-to-day businesses, is maybe a bit overblown. So, we can take that in either order. What are the lasting changes? And then, what might just be a quick blip, or that we might be dramatizing a little too much? Amy, why don't you start us on that?
Sure. Well, from Cleanbox's point of view, our business has a lot of different avenues. So I think that, for example, if we're all wearing masks for the next year, hopefully the following year or whatever, we will not be. So maybe there are some things that for our business have a smaller window, and that's okay. Some of our products, and that's okay because that's exactly what we designed them for, and it doesn't negatively impact our 5-10 year vision or our 2-3 year vision. It can only benefit it. It can only help. And that being said, though, I do think again, coming back to what businesses are going to have to do, and even the home consumer. It's inevitable that if something changes the world for 2 years, let's say, hopefully it won't be that long, but let's just say.
Sure, looking like it.
Yeah, and that's going to have a permanent impact. And most likely, when people are back on the subways again and back out on the streets and back in the restaurants, and those are 50-75% then complete capacity, it's still going to be in the back of your mind. Okay, well, 200,000 people in the U.S. have died to date from this, right? So that's a real number. That's real impact. And so I think it's gonna stick around for a while. In terms of innovation, I suppose it's a benefit that we're already, we were, startup before, so we're kind of used to the slap on the face and turn the other way kind of thing. Like,
Right.
how fast can we pivot? How quickly can we do this? And that's attracted the kind of person that is an entrepreneur or an entrepreneurial mindset and understands, okay, to make this happen, we can't go through a process that a bureaucracy or a company of 10,000 people would have to go through. We have the challenge and the advantage of saying, okay, we know how to do this, and let's do it fast.
And we have seen some large, back to my retail beat I was on, we've seen some large retailers completely go out of business, being so out of touch and out of step with the pre-COVID changes we already talked about, and then what happened during COVID, and then other big players like Walmart, who had enough sense to sort of thrive in this environment, and they had all the abilities to do all the delivery and fulfillment. Have actually seen an upswing in their business because of this. So yeah, I mean, we're fortunate. We're all nimble, smallish companies. Even the one I work at is pretty small still. But it really is a testament to whether you can adapt or not. But that can't mean this level of adaptation and pivoting. I hope is not. I mean, this pace is probably not the norm, and I hope not. And there's only so much you can pivot before you're spun around in circles, right? So. I'm assuming this is going to settle into some set of patterns we can handle for at least the next couple of years without having to keep reinventing our businesses. Tim, did you want to jump in and add anything to that?
No, I echo those views. I think that's, yeah. I mean, from one thing I will say from Zero Latency's perspective, which was interesting, is we used to send 2 Zero Latency employees all over the world. We had a plan to make that remote. That was going to be a sort of 6-month project. We just knuckled down and got that done in 6 weeks. And that's not because people weren't doing anything before. That's just the power of focus and ride or die imperative. And I think that's what these things do for companies. And I think one thing that I'm really grateful for at Zero Latency is we have a very a lean mindset in terms of we're growing, but we are a startup mentality. And I think having really great people and a small, nimble team has allowed us to pivot out of this. We've taken hits. Like, I would say COVID was a full-blown broadside to the Zero Latency ship, but we've managed to decamp into a smaller vessel and keep sailing. And that's ultimately all you can hope to do to ride out this storm, because it's touched on all these different points. As things are starting to solidify, as we try things, government tries things, society tries things, and I think it's going to be like we're 6-7 months into this already in the sort of Western world. Asia's been dealing with it for longer. And to talk about societal change as well, it's interesting. I was talking to a gentleman that has entertainment offerings all through Southeast Asia and Asia, and talking about the SARS epidemic of people were pretty scarred, and that was brutal. Like 30% of people that got that virus, I think, died. Like that was a real doozy. And masks are a big thing. People still wear them. If they wear them as out of respect, if they've got a cold, you see it in Japan, they put the mask on. I think that stuff will change. And I think that's really positive ultimately, being a bit more aware about that stuff. But then people did come back to entertainment venues. It didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like a hard cliff and then up. It was people dropped off, and then they slowly came back up into restaurants, into aquariums, into different facilities. So I think that will happen this time.
Oh, Tim, I almost took the bait on this one. Being in America, I just escaped the fires. I went to a couple of the other Western states who are a little less taking this stuff seriously than, say, Northern Californians. And I only wish most Americans had that sort of same ethos around mask wearing and for the greater good. But anyway, I didn't want to editorialize too hard. Let's not focus
and you
on that.
You get to walk around the street dressed like a ninja. That's just also
I know that's
quite amusing. It's actually quite fun. It's quite fun.
That's how we do it, right? So look, we want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. So you guys, thank you so much. We could go on, I'm sure, for hours on these topics. They're deep, they're amazing. You two are doing God's work, in my opinion. This is incredible. So keep it up. Everett, I don't know if you're jumping back in to join us on the Q&A, but I'm just going to start. I'm looking over here at the panel. Let's get the Q&A.
Yeah, please go ahead, Tony, with any of the questions.
Okay. You can VO on some of the. So there was a request to send the names of the moderators and companies they're representing. So if you or Joe could just pop all that info into the Q&A answers, I'll publish this one. Let's see. Let me look at what's in here. All right. Give me a second here. Can you guys see these questions too? Feel free to jump in and look at the thing with me because I can only scan so fast.
I think I can see them.
Beep Boop asks, as a recent graduate in material science engineering, I noticed most production is halted and hiring freezes everywhere. Is it a wise decision to take this time and invest into learning VR, AR software? Well, being the resident software guy in the panel, I suppose I can start. I would have to say, yes, it is still a wise decision to invest in this. First of all, if you're learning how to develop for VR or AR, you're learning real-time 3D, if you haven't already. Real-time 3D is going to be underneath everything we do for every user interface for the foreseeable future. This is the next wave that's happening. Simple stuff on our phones, more complicated stuff on game consoles, and then when it comes to immersion, just the most incredible, stuff you're ever going to see. So this is where you want to put your time, is learning real-time 3D. I also think there's going to be no shortage of work in business in VR and AR in terms of software development. Yeah, like there's going to be some local pivoting. I was going to ask you about this one, Tim, as well. What this means for content creators. If you've slowed, if your businesses generally had to pivot, what does it mean for all the creators? And I don't know how your model works, whether you license, you do rev shares. So if you can elaborate, but let me finish my little diatribe first. We will come out of this. 3D is going to underpin everything, and it's going to be immersive interfaces. So absolutely invest. And if there have been work stoppages or supply chain issues, we all hope they're temporary. And I'm going to come back to that one. Let's talk about how you couldn't buy a damn Oculus Quest for a while. They were all in back order. And if we get time, we'll rant about that. We were feeling it. We were feeling supply chain all over the place, but I do believe that's a blip. Guys, you want to jump in?
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah. Look, I think supply chain wise, definitely it seems to be getting better already. There's definitely a big hit, and it just goes to show how interconnected the entire global economy is in terms of supply chain. I think it was a real eye opener to a lot of countries. In terms of learning, I don't think I personally think that turning your attention to learning how to make software, either how to design it, how it works, how you build use cases for that, wherever you want to sit in that spectrum is incredibly important, because it's even understanding how software is made, why it's made, how you make it well. I just don't see any business going forward, so that's not valuable, just generally. And in terms of the way we operate for content, we do bring things onto the platform from other providers, but at the moment we're actually finding less content in our venues is actually better. There is a bit of choice fatigue. If you have too many packages, people get confused. You're actually better to offer less high quality content is certainly where we're taking things.
Even from specifically LBEs, I mean, there's so much you can do in immersive technology, and a lot of businesses, I think that's, whether they were experimenting with it or not beforehand, they're certainly going to look at it, because the companies that have already invested in XR have been building those programs out, and they've been experiencing phenomenal results with it, whether that be remote expertise or internal soft training, or even in the healthcare system where they're not stopping using XR. So when it comes to content creation and people who know what they're doing, whether whatever end of the spectrum that you're on, I only see continued opportunity. I can't speak to hiring freezes on that particular side of the business, but I can say I certainly see a lot of opportunity in the future.
Yeah, and I've got to believe that most of the audience here would agree with that. Amy, here's one for you. from Howard. What's available at the retail level for XR device sanitation, e.g., for small-scale technology demonstrations while socially distanced? So it's not LBE, but it's same kind of idea. Bring some people in, show them some stuff.
Yeah.
What could I get if I had a small company that wanted this?
Probably what you'd want to do is, we have 3 product lines. The one is the CX series, and that's for HMDs. So anything like what you're wearing now, Tim, or a VR, AR headset, anything else. We also have the Star series, which is the major. So you're talking about decontaminating other things, including your headsets. It'll fit even a mask in there. So it's kind of a catch-all ad hoc kind of product. And I think, yeah, we've got that available. It's available now. So if you guys want to reach out, please do. And I actually, I see below that question, a question.
Yeah, please pick up on the UVC question as well. Yeah.
The UVC devices, and I think it's great. Number one, that there's so much awareness now about UVC light, but that there's also a lot of confusion about it. So just to throw something out there for you guys, it's very different than UVA and UVB. We published a collaborative white paper, about 29 pages, along with Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach and Resinova Laboratories in Maryland. And if you haven't checked it out, but you're interested, please go to our website, download it for free, share it. The point is to educate and to dispel myths and answer basic questions. So our UVC is in an LED. We don't use mercury tubes or bulbs. And that matters because there's no heat component, there's no mercury. We don't operate at a nanometer wavelength that produces ozone. And we can also say this is the most intense for decontamination, and we can reach 99.999% kill rate in 60 seconds. And that's important because you don't have a significant exposure. But the question about materials, we've done wet lab testing on products from some top VR headset makers, and AR. And I won't mention names, but we've come back and we've passed both of their internal processes. And we also show, we've also simulated a year's worth of continual exposure to our UVC engineering, and shown really no difference, no visible difference, even at the microscopic level. Everything that passed the requirements, and that was a simulation that doesn't really reflect real world use, because you're not going to be exposing something to thousands of hours of continual exposure to UVC. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's a lot of information that fire hosed me for sure. So one of the things you guys, the Eventbrite link actually has, links to the websites, like right on the Eventbrite page. So please go get more information about these companies. And I'm sure the speakers would be happy to talk to you offline as well. This is going to be for you to take the lead on, Tim. From Heather, do you think the fact that headsets are getting cheaper could impact LBE? Because people could buy their own. Like I could get a Quest at home. Yeah. My experience at places like the Void is that they're incredibly expensive. The cost of a family going is almost the same as buying a Quest. Mm. So how do you answer that one? That is an excellent question, Heather.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think there's two elements to that. People still seem to not, even though the Quest are super cheap. I was actually doing some research before this. They haven't sold nearly as many as a PlayStation. And why is that? And I think there's an arcade phase that things need to go through when new adoption. Almost every technology has started out at home first. The book before the printing press. Anyway, you can go through. Movies are the same. Video games are the same. I think location-based entertainment is the same. I think, and what Zero Latency strives to do, and I think by and large does it well, is provide something you can't get at home. And that is the scale of the movement is really fun. I like the Quest. I like home VR, but ultimately having a 3x3, 4x4 meter box is not that much room. And it's hard to make compelling content in that space. The movement mechanics, teleport, etc., are challenging. So there is really good use cases for in-home VR headsets. There's some awesome content on them. But what we are doing, I won't speak to other LBE companies, is providing something that you can't get at home. I think for smaller arcades that just have a few Vives set up, that will be challenging. The Quest's a cool headset. Oculus is going deep on commissioning and getting content onto that platform. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be hard. So what you need to be doing as an LBE operator is providing something you can't get at home. And that's really where we see the future being, and that's sort of what we've doubled down on since the beginning of the business, is what is something that you cannot replicate at home easily. And also, as hardware gets cheaper, it has a flow-on effect to LBE because the hardware is cheaper to buy. You know, it's not.
Oh, so then your cost could go down too.
So the cost goes down, the democratization helps, you know, you factor that in with cheaper retail, and I think there's a really exciting opportunity there. And also it's great that the more people that are understanding what VR is and experiencing it, the better, to be honest. I think, you know, I don't know what the numbers are. Tony has better ones, but the amount of people in Western countries or, you know, larger democracies that have experienced VR is probably still very, very low. So getting it out there anyway, I think is really, really cool. People put the Quest on at home, they play it, go, that was cool. Oh, wow, I can play with 8 players and have like walk around a giant space. Awesome, I'm going to try that. I actually think it helps drive those in. But I agree that the price,
you think in the home could drive LBE awareness, the inverse of what a lot of people inside the industry insiders thought it would be, consumers' first taste would be in the mall. We could see the opposite effect potentially. I think
potentially, and then just lowering those hardware costs and getting that awareness up is key. But you know, I think there's that 1.3. It's hard to get data. Everyone keeps it pretty cagey. But something I was reading, someone had sort of extrapolated, there's like 1.3 million Steam VR installs globally. That's not a lot. You know, it's still very much in its nascent stages. I like to say it's not quite at Pong. It's probably at Pac-Man. If you're looking at the evolution of a technology, like we've got some time to go. Hopefully someone cracks the Wolfenstein soon.
There you go. So we have a few more. Go ahead, Amy. Sorry.
Going through in the XR space, we tend to see all of the use cases and all the possibility. And so, you know, we're very positive about it. But the fact remains is that most people have not experienced VR. They just haven't, population-wise, globally, and probably for most demographics. It's just a small percentage, and those that have tried it before or know about it have had an old experience, you know, maybe a couple years ago, whether they liked it or they didn't like it or they didn't understand the purpose or like that's not for me. I think would have a different experience now. So potentially, if you want a silver lining from this whole being forced to stay at home, you know, if people are buying these headsets, they can actually say, oh wow, you know, VR is different than I thought it was, or that I experienced the first time, you know, and that could actually say drive people back when they're able to get out of the house.
If they can get the headsets, as I quipped earlier.
Yes.
You know, they're on back order.
Yeah.
It's like VR can't get a break. This would have been the Oculus Quest's time. Probably maybe sell a few million, I'm thinking. Yeah. But they're on backward, right? They can't make them fast enough, which is probably touching on supply chain issues. Don't know. I don't have, you know, any inside track on what the issues were within Facebook. I just have my own personal frustration that there couldn't be more Quests out there in everyone's homes right now. And I'm signaling out the Quest just because it's got the best sort of price performance, you know, thing right now versus getting one of the PC tethered ones. Plenty of great systems out there.
And ease of setting up as well. I think one thing the Quest has nailed. I mean, yes, you've got less graphical capability. That's very clear when you put it on. But gee, it's easy to set up, and that is
and
so
then you
critical.
get Beat Saber. Boom.
Yeah.
I mean, good to go, right?
Maybe that's the Wolfenstein. That's a great game, and it's 2
or 3 titles. I mean, like any console, right? It's all good.
Yeah.
I got a couple of questions around Unity. Okay, and they're both like Unity 3D. When's AR Foundation going to support fully to HoloLens 2? I'm not sure that information's publicly available, which means I can't say anything. I apologize. I just want to make sure that I let you know that I saw that question and I wasn't ignoring it. There's a handful of questions from an anonymous querent about 5G. I'm wondering if these are concerns about any of these weird overblown rumors that were happening about 5G and health, relationship to COVID. I'm not sure. Do you see these, you guys? A couple of 5G oriented questions here. If anybody has any insight into what these mean, I would love to, you know, there's 3 or 4 of them, so I don't want to ignore them.
Here, Tony, let me jump in.
You want to jump in? Thank you.
So I looked at those and I couldn't quite make heads or tails, but I have a question for you guys.
Please, that'd be great.
At the risk of being a bit too broad, the 3 of you are thought of as real thought leaders in XR. So as thought leaders, as the people we turn to who are supposed to know the answers, what are the things that you haven't figured out yet for the next 5 years, let's say? You know, what is that big X factor where you really don't know if it's going to happen or not that is going to radically change XR. So for example, I think it used to be, is Apple going to come out with the big device? Now that's a more question of when, not if. But what comes to mind? What are the things that you don't know yet that you think are going to be really pivotal looking forward?
I can start. I think that I'm going to switch over to enterprise instead of LBE for a second, because I think that there's a huge opportunity there that is much broader of an application. And a big unknown is, again, going back to some of these large global companies have played around or invested in various degrees of VR or AR or mixed reality. And I think the big unknown in that sense, and that would, impact a lot of things, is how quickly they can take those use cases and make them public and validate that information, kind of like they've been doing in healthcare. And then also how quickly, depending, I think it'll completely depend on the culture and the bureaucracy of the company, how quickly they'll be able to take some of those use cases and benefits and roll it out across their, global locations. And that's a bit of an unknown. I think there's opportunity that is focused now on anything online, any kind of digital platform, any kind of immersive platform, because people can't go out in public. So that's forcing companies that might have taken another couple of years before you even got the attention of the decision makers. Now maybe there's an opportunity to have the attention of the decision makers. It's a question of what the timing would look like on rolling that out. And then, of course, content's got to keep up with that.
Oh, let me pick up on that. And I'll let Tim have the last word as we wind down Q&A. You mentioned content creation, content keeping up with that. This is the thing that I would probably focus on. Scaling up content creation is probably the biggest challenge this industry collectively faces. 3D is hard to make, requires certain specialized skills. We don't have all the right capture technologies in place to capture real world stuff. We don't have enough AI and machine learning backed things to make other kinds of synthetic content creation easier. The stuff that Tim puts out is kind of big budget, high production value things. But if I want to make an e-commerce store and show off all my products so people can spin them around on this phone, like the kind of things I care about, that's still really hard. Google can show you a little AR model that shows up as a search result. You see the 3D, you spin it, you hit the AR button. And my buddies in Google and I joke about this all the time. It's like, where are all the freaking shoes going to come from? Where's all the product going to come from? And as much as engines like Unity make this stuff easier, we still think we have a long way to go to make content creation even easier for more people who aren't professionals, who don't know programming. And so there's a tooling side to this. There's a capture side to this. Production and distribution. And all of those things, I believe, ultimately, as we work the kinks out of the hardware side of this and the other things, some of the things we talked about today, are going to be bottlenecks. Tim, do you want to add to that, or any other flavor, color?
Yes, I agree with you, and I think that's that content pipeline. Like, how do you get the Squarespace equivalent so people can be doing different applications? Because ultimately, I think one thing that I would flag as a concern is the idea that everything's going to be in home. They're going to sell, like, some of the, obviously in keynote speeches when people are talking at the high level about companies, they want to put in big metrics of adoption. XR is not there yet, and there is still hard limitations with battery power and how do you manage different things, and content creation, absolutely, and how do you get enough content so people will buy the platform. I think it's, can everyone hold the line long enough for the technology to catch up with the aspirations of the industry and to have enough of an install base so people want to create the tools to be building it, because there's and I think that's really, that in-home adoption is going to be critical. And to your point around, is it AR shopping? How do we get a million sneakers in there? How do we work those pipelines is going to be critical, because there needs to be enough gear being bought for companies to still want to keep playing in this space. And I think that's critical, because we feel like we're kind of halfway through this, XR 2.0 journey. There's some awesome hardware out there. There's some great, there's all these different products that are cracking bits of the code. And how do we hold the line long enough for that to be a thing that is as seamless as, is it a pair of glasses like in William Gibson's virtual light book that it's seamless and it goes for 12 hours off a charge? Like, how do we crack that code? I think we're in this interesting bit where everyone sees the potential, the kind of hype machine was there in like whenever it was, 5 or 6 years ago. Now we're in the reality of it. It's like, yeah, it's hard. There's supply chains. Like, what are we going to do about batteries? Oh shit, COVID, my friend. What about, oh hell, it's COVID. What are we going to do? We've got to come out of this and keep getting those real business cases that can prove out the technology. And I just hope that I see them happening. And I just hope that, everyone maintains the passion to keep that going, because it's a cool medium. It's a cool medium.
Agreed, amen. And I sure hope we're about halfway through and not say 10% or something a lot less. So from your lips. Everett, do we have time for more questions, or do we need to wind down?
I think we should probably wind down.
Yeah, sorry, there's some we didn't get to. I'm assuming we can capture some of these before we sign off, and you can potentially do some follow-ups later if we missed anybody. So I'll hand it back to you to take us home, you and Joe.
All righty, I'll go live, and Joe, feel free to pop up as well. Thank you guys so much. This has really been fantastic, really interesting. Thank you to Microsoft for collaborating on this event series. The speakers, you can stay live so you can wave us all off. Thanks to Joe for co-hosting, to the technical staff at Microsoft behind the scenes, and obviously to all of you guys, the speakers. We have 3 more events upcoming, at least. Next one is October. It's focused on XR for healthcare and mental wellness. I think that's really going to be a good one. We're going to have some good speakers there. Again, I'm happy to bring this to you from my role at Vrara. If you are interested in joining the association, I run the San Francisco branch. I'm happy to talk to anyone. Email me, everett@vrara.com. And don't forget, the Vrara Global Summit is next week. Joe's one of our speakers, so go sign up just to see her. Thank you again, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.